Okay, roll call. Molly Krachowiak,
Here.
Danielle Bailey here. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second, all in favor, voice vote.
Aye.
I have a little bit of a feedback. I don't know if that's me, sorry. Okay, we'll move right on to item 2A, communication plan update.
So what we did is we reached out to the Donovan group, and it's nice to see you, Perry. Joe was having some difficulty logging in, so he was restarting his computer and he was going to come back. So I'll watch him in the waiting room and let him back in. So what we did is we had two things that we had on the docket as far as surveys that we wanted to get out to the community. One was the communication survey to get a benchmark on that, and the other one was the Esser survey, because there are some requirements through DPI on reaching out to stakeholders and getting input around how we spend that money. So we reached out to the Donovan group. I personally know of the group because when I was in my new superintendent's cohort like 3 years ago, they came and spoke to all of us newbies and talked about the work they do with districts. Then COVID hit, and pretty much, I want to say once a month at least, maybe even more often than that, when we were meeting as a statewide group of superintendents, Donovan group would be there because they helped with how to communicate on so many things to families, to the community, just really provided us a lot of information, which was really, really helpful to us through all of this. And so they're at a lot of the like administrator and superintendent type meetings and events because this is what they do. They work with school districts and they help school districts with communication. So I reached out to Joe, and earlier I actually reached out to him when I was thinking about doing that statement about the Senate bill, and we talked about that a little bit, and then that didn't quite work out. But then when Jenica and Lindsay and I started talking about the communication survey and the Esser survey, we reached right back out to them and had a really great meeting. So we invited them to come and just talk about just a bit about their process. And they have some sample surveys that would need to be whittled down and, finalized, but just to share some of that with you and Molly. So, and I can see you now, Joe.
I am back. Can you see that I'm sweating?
Just like your picture though. How are you so like presentable at 5 o'clock on Tuesday?
Hairspray, right, Perry?
Okay.
Hairspray.
I don't use hairspray, John. I'm not here to use for hairspray. So
it's nice to see everyone. Sorry about that. Sorry, I'm out of breath. I was running around and plugging stuff.
And then Joe, just to give you a little context before you get started, I don't know which order people are in on the screen, but two board members are the chairs of this committee, Danielle Bailey and Molly. I'm going to say your name wrong.
Krachowiak.
Thank you. So those are the two board members on the call. And then Jenica Westfall, who you talked with on our last call, and Lindsay Johnson are on the call. And then we just have a couple community members that logged into the meeting.
Oh, that's great. Okay. Well, appreciate it. And maybe I can give you kind of a general overview. I know Allison talked a little bit about the Donovan group, and then Perry, maybe if you want to say a few words generally about our surveys. And then if you want, I know Allison talked with you a little bit about some samples that we kind of put together just to give you kind of an idea of what we can do. Does that sound good? So with that, first of all, thank you again for the opportunity to be with you today. And again, Joe Donovan. And I live just down the road in Wauwatosa, and Perry lives further down the road in Middleton. And as Allison was mentioning, the Donovan Group is a communications firm. So we work with schools and school districts, originally just in Wisconsin. Matter of fact, when I started the company, 15 years ago, the Donovan Group was a group of one, me, and we've expanded over the years. And among other things, about 10 years ago, we started providing crisis communication services to ASA and WASDA members. And we've grown and added great folks, including Perry, who I'll introduce in a moment. And now we work with districts in, I guess, last count, 19 states. And we have people that do what I do in 4 different states. We have offices in 8 states. We kind of share some territories. And so we have always done, back to the beginning of our company, done a lot of survey and research work. And it just made sense in this last year because we were doing so much of it to kind of spin off and to set up kind of a separate entity that we call DG Intelligence. Because we were doing survey work not only for schools and districts about communications items and referendum items, but increasingly districts were coming back to us and said, hey, can you help us with climate surveys? And Grafton, we've been doing their stuff for a long time, and it started when we did a referendum survey way back when. So I am just so grateful that Perry Hibner, who is the former communications person in the Middleton Cross Plains School District, joined us and is doing kind of heading up that effort. And so we thought that we would kind of tag team the conversation today. And so with that, Perry, you want to say a few words about our research work that we do?
Be happy to. Thanks, Joe. So again, so far this year, I think we've done about 10 or 12 surveys for districts just in Wisconsin alone. Again, they have ranged the gamut, as Joe talked about. So the big key in terms of putting together a quality survey is working with partners. And so, we put together things based on what Allison, Jenica, and Lindsay kind of told us that Glendale-River Hills is interested in. But now, what we'd really like is feedback about what questions really need to be on there. What questions do we want to whittle down? Because quite frankly, we want to have a survey that's no more than 15 or 20 minutes for community members to take. They just aren't going to stay with it if it's longer than that. So that's, that's one of our big goals here in the next couple of days, is to really get that. And I know it's two parts. I realize there's the communication piece to find out what you're doing well, maybe what the community wants more of, what they feel like they can get less of. But in addition, that Esser fund piece, not only because of the requirement from it, but again, we look at surveys as an opportunity to engage your community, to inform your community, and then obviously that two-way communication, they feel good about being able to share their thoughts with districts as well. So that I'm very excited about it. I realize we're in that rough draft survey part, but we'll be able to turn this around pretty quickly for you.
Can I ask a quick question about the Esser survey? Because I'm not,
Sure.
I want to understand it. It's something mandatory that we have to do, but I just got to do an overview of it. Are those questions, like, is that all that's all made? We're not going to be like revising that, or is the Esser also, are we like coming up with, we are? Oh, okay.
So there's some questions that with DPI that we have to ask,
Okay.
we're required to ask, but we
Okay.
don't want to get too into detail, because if we go too far into detail, then we're committing to something. So this was a sample they had found from another district that hit the guidelines that DPI is requiring from us. And I really liked how it kept things very broad, but also touched on a lot of the key topics that we're really focusing on this year.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that the key the key is that we want to, you want to cast a wide net, and in some cases, right, we certainly want to collect the information that we're required to collect, but also usually we have the flexibility to be able to do that in such a way that it can, in addition to meeting the requirements of the law, that we can collect information that's also usable for the district as well. So with that, are you, Allison, would you like me to kind of maybe go through at a high level the surveys the survey drafts that we kind of created? Would that be okay?
Does that sound okay? I mean, would that be helpful for you guys?
Yeah, oops, sorry.
That was me. I apologize.
That's okay. Yeah, Molly, would you like, I'm open. I have some, like, I think questions or some comments about it, but maybe if you go through it, that will help me.
Okay. Do you want to start with what works best? Do you want to start with the questions, or should I jump in?
No, go ahead.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to share, if it's okay with you, I am going to share my screen. Give me a second here. And maybe I'll just start with, I'm going to start by showing how the survey looks when we do it. So give me a second here. So generally speaking, when we're talking about doing a survey, we're talking about conducting a survey that is online. We also want to always make the survey available to community members and others to be able to take the survey offline. And so obviously we want to make sure that we make the survey available to as many people as we can. And so this is a survey that was created, one of our colleagues, Malden, I believe, is that Massachusetts? I believe so. I was not involved in this survey, but this was an Esser survey, and I'm going to come back to it. I'm going to show it to you in a little different format, but I just wanted to show how this comes up. And again, everybody has taken surveys like this before. The typical, the style of surveys. It can be taken on a cell phone. It can be taken on, really any digital device. It can be done in such a way that you don't have to have a really, really strong connection for it to work. As people go through the surveys, they there's a little indicator on the top that shows how far they are in the survey. This one is a super simple survey. We can include any type of question, including select all that apply, to Likert score questions, to other questions that are in a grid like this, and of course open response questions. One of the keys that Perry and I talk about a lot is that we don't want to have too many open response questions, and we don't want to have a lot of open response questions right next to each other. That's where we tend to see survey abandons. Okay, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you a draft of survey, and you should all see one with your logo on top. The idea as we were putting this together, we said, what would a communication survey that also includes an Esser survey look? And I will tell you that this isn't terribly common for us to connect two different surveys. Perry and I talked with a district outside of Chicago today that wanted to do a traditional communication survey with a marketing style survey because they're in a situation where they feel like they need to do some marketing. And so doing kind of 2-in-1 surveys is something that we do. The key always is to be able to be really honest about why we're collecting the information, and to do it in such a way that the survey, I always feel, has kind of a rhythm to it, that it's such a way that we're not asking the same question again and again, that we space out open response questions, and that helps keep people from abandoning the survey. So the survey that we've shared here today, and Perry, please jump in, otherwise I will dominate. We don't want that. Starts out with a typical letter that would be from either the superintendent or from the board president, typically, or both. That's something that can be discussed. Again, this is we're looking at a Google Doc here. So we just have, it's not programmed yet. We go to a page break. Then we like to ask a series of questions that allow us to better disaggregate the data. And so we ask some questions, including what is your age? Where do you reside? We make sure that we have other in here because we want to make sure that we're also engaging parents who open enroll in. We typically ask the question, and we've included it here, how long have you lived in the school district community? We find that that's important because we could have someone, I ran into this in a survey that Perry and I did in northern Wisconsin, where it was really interesting. We had a number of people who were relatively young for me anyway. They were in their 20s and early 30s, but they had lived in the district their whole life, right? We find that people who lived in the district obviously have kind of a higher level of understanding and ownership of the district than those who moved in. And so it's important for us to be able to know that. We go down, and question 4 in this situation is, I call it a sorter question. And it's a select all. And it's everything from I have school age children, preschool age children, children who are younger than 4, children who are currently attend or have attended the school district. Maybe they're enrolled in another school district, or I have grandchildren. Maybe I graduated from the district. Maybe I've moved here, but I've never had children in the school district. We want to be able to collect information about whether they're an employee or whether they're a student. We can change this. We have all kinds of flexibility in how we do this. but you can get a sense of how we're able to disaggregate the data as we're going along. It's really important for us to be able to say, not only how does everyone respond, well, how do they how are they telling us that they, how are they talking with us about communications efforts, but to be able to disaggregate it and say, what about our employees? Maybe what about our students? Or maybe are our students different than people who've graduated? So we use this question to disaggregate the data. Let me stop there because otherwise I'll keep going. Perry, what am I missing so far?
So I think the important thing with all the demographic information that we collect, obviously it's an anonymous survey, but what we think is important for districts, particularly in surveys like referendums or communications, is that it allows you to break it down, get more granular with it. So that, for example, you may find that the way your staff answers communications questions further down in the survey are different from your community residents. And as a result, it may help you identify then certain goals and objectives going forward based on the results you get from the survey. So that's why this is so valuable, is to be able to break it down like that.
Mm-hmm.
It can be a little bit, we get a little bit weird and a little bit nerdy when we're disaggregating the data, because you really learn a lot about your survey respondents. One of the things that I'll add to that is that, and we just kind of say this as a matter, just as in regular course of our work, is that we can disaggregate the data so much that that the cell size becomes so little that it becomes not usable, right? And so we always say, a cell size of about 30 is good. Once we get down to it, if there are two people that fit a demographic characteristic, that may not be particularly helpful. Question number 5 is one where we say, and again, we have all of the flexibility in the world, but I'll just kind of present what we have here. Question 5 would be a logic question. So someone who said earlier in the survey, the questions before, that I have children who currently are enrolled in the district. The survey can be smart enough to say, okay, earlier you said the children in the district, where did they attend? And here we're including not only, or I guess the question is that I have school-age children. We ask where the children attend, including options outside the school district, and an open response at the end for other. We then do a page break. And then typically we'll go into and we'll say, where do you get the information about the school district? We try to include, a whole list of different things about where they get information. And one of the things that we like to do, can be kind of a challenge, but we like to differentiate district level communications from school communications, right? And we find that sometimes is really helpful. One of the things please do.
Okay, this is where I started just wondering to myself about the responses you're going to get and what we would do with this information. So I'm looking at this. I might check like 10 of these boxes, right? Because I get a little bit of information from each place. And I'm trying to think how that helps us, because I know that we do offer all these various forms of communication. And so it's possible that someone would say, yes, I get all my information from all of these places, but I guess I'm wondering if there's like a ranking or like some way for us to determine how much reliance there is on various forms of communication, so that it's a little bit more nuanced. That was what I was thinking when these questions kind of started popping up.
I think that's a really good question. I appreciate it. And I think how I might encourage you to kind of consider it is that, especially for parents and individuals that are as engaged as everyone, on the Zoom meeting, you're right, it probably wouldn't be as helpful. I think where it is helpful is if we have parents who are a little bit less engaged. And especially as we go through the survey, we may find, I'll give you an example. We had a situation where the school district was spending a tremendous amount of time and energy on Facebook and Twitter, and we're getting no traction And they found that through their survey that not a lot of people were looking for information about the district on Facebook and Twitter. And it allowed them to help them decide that maybe it was okay for them to not spend as much time on that. The other piece of this that we're always looking for is, things like district mailings. District mailings are really expensive, right? And I will tell you, there is going to be some time in my lifetime where we don't have to print and send information to community members. But especially as we come up here and we look at the demographic, the 65 and older, right? Typically we find that they receive information from the district through district mailings, and quite often they'll tell us that they like it. So you're right, it can be nuanced. Now, Danielle, to your point, we can, if we wanted to, as we go to this next one, we ask a question here. And Perry, maybe you can weigh in on this, about what sources do folks consider to be most credible and why? Or we could make this a ranking question, right? Which is to say, what are the best ones? Perry, what are your thoughts?
Danielle, that's what I was just going to say, is that so credibility is different from what are the ones that I find most useful, most beneficial.
Right.
So we could certainly, in a number of our communication surveys, we offer either a 1, 2, 3 or a 1 through 5, where then participants rank of those. They might have checked off the box for 12 things, but what are the 5 ways they prefer to get their communication? We can certainly add that, and that would help then your district identify maybe where we want to spend more time or less time based on what we're seeing. So, and then we can also break it down by those subgroups if we need to.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting, because when I looked at that question, my thought was, so you take the demographic data and you take whether or not they have kids in the district, you take whether or not they're staff or they're not staff, what age kids they have, and you really like match that up. Even if they pick 10, some people won't, you know what I mean? You match that up with who, so then you get an idea of like what they prefer. And then I loved the next step about what's most credible, because if somebody says, I prefer going on Facebook, but then they don't list that as a credible source, how can we use social media to make it more credible if it's something that people really find accessible? Do you know what I mean? Like, I felt like there were just lots of ways to kind of like cross walk the data and really get a picture of, okay, which group prefers what, and how could we like beef that up if that's their preferred method? Do you know what I mean, of getting information? So I just thought there was lots of, like, kind of a data nerd myself, like lots of different ways we could look at that information. And
who isn't? Conversely, I will tell you, because we did the same thing in Middleton, and we did find that people were on our social media sites all the time, but that it wasn't necessarily used for credibility purposes. That so as a result, that's not what we used it for. And that's, I mean, and so that might be what is valuable for you, is that you use it more to promote all the good things happening in Glendale-River Hills, but you don't necessarily use it as an informational tool to the same degree you use other communications tools.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, I think I see that. I guess I'm parsing out reliance on various information, right, versus a preference for how do you receive information versus the quality of that information. So I liked your point, Allison, about sort of using all the data to kind of get at that from various ways. So, okay.
And we can go deeper on that. And so question 8 is specific to social media. And it tells people, by the way, if you don't use social media, you can skip this. So this wouldn't be required. But we say, when it comes to social media, what is your preferred source? This would be a ranking question. And by the way, we say 1 to 5, probably just to keep it really, oh, there are just 5.
We only use Facebook.
Okay.
Right, Allison?
Yeah, we only use, I mean, as far as like from the
So-
district officially, yeah. So
Yeah.
we could probably maybe do something with that. Joe, I could see like, if we just wanted electronic, like board meeting
Yep.
recordings, website, Facebook, you know what I mean? If you just think about like
Yep.
online type resources, yeah.
Yep.
School website, is that on the first one? Yeah, website.
Yeah, we do above. Yeah.
So maybe that's not even an area we need to dig into, like that.
So
might
I
be
don't think,
just
yeah, I
take
don't
off.
think this question is necessary, because if we're already talking about district website and everything else in the previous question and we're only using Facebook, then I don't think that that question even needs to be on there.
School
You
board.
want to strike that one?
So yes,
You
I'm
did-
sure.
And just to like, just so you know, I did say to Joe and Pierre, I was like, yes, bring them all. And we can always, but
Yeah.
just to get an idea
Oh,
of what
yeah.
it look like, and
That's
then we
great.
can
Yeah.
take anything
Yep.
off. Yeah.
I would go up to I would differentiate in question 6, because Facebook, we have an official school Facebook page and there's a parents Facebook page, and there's probably, so
Okay.
knowing which of those would make sense for us as well.
Agreed.
Gotcha. I'm glad that Allison brought that up, because we do have, as we're putting things together, typically how we do it is we'll have a lot of extra questions and we'll say, okay, let's throw everything at it. And then as we're going through the revision process, we continue to say, I always say, we want to make the survey built for speed, right? You don't want to ask something if you're not going to use the data. And so then as we're going through, we'll say, well, do we really need this one, or can we get rid of it? So this is helpful. Number 9 is a question about technology and sources that people use. And so this is a little bit different than how do you get your information now. This is kind of going into the, and we tend to spread this out, you know, how do you get all of your information? And so we presented that here. Perry, any thoughts on that one?
So again, you'd have to decide. It's obviously not specific to any district, a question like this. The reason why it can be valuable, though, is, for example, especially as districts are looking to maybe expand their reach on some of their communication tools, you may find that you have stakeholders who say, I really like the idea of blogs, but maybe that's not something you've done much before. And so as a result, you know, you'd look at the results and say, yes, that's something we want to do more of. Maybe Allison's going to do a weekly blog about what's happening at the district level or something like that. Again, that to me, that's the benefit of a question like this. But again, if we're looking to really try to narrow this down and lessen the amount of time that people are spending on it, it's certainly one we could remove.
I have to say, honestly, I kind of love this question, because so when I do Infinite Campus auto dialers, I always wonder, should I use the text message? So like just having that on there, and I've often wondered about blogs or podcasts and whether or not, because obviously that's a time commitment, right? To do something like that. So I always wondered, is that something people would be interested in? And then even thinking about the fact that we use Zoom, would it, if there were a ton of people that said they use YouTube, it's easy to transfer a lot of that. Do you know what so I think it would just be really interesting to know if there's something in this list that people really, that stand out, that people would appreciate.
Quite often when we think about communications planning, I always say communications planning is asking and answering some simple questions, right? You know, what are our goals? What stakeholders do we want to reach? What messages do we want to carry to, you know, our stakeholders, or what do we want our stakeholders to know, understand, and feel, right? And then the last thing I always say is, what tools can we use to carry our messages to our stakeholders? And building on what Allison just said a little while ago, you know, podcasts. We hear about podcasts a lot. I love podcasts. We all love podcasts, right? Podcasts are great, but my mom doesn't listen to podcasts, right? And so it's stakeholder specific. And so, you know, we probably wouldn't necessarily use podcasts necessarily to reach our 65 and older necessarily. That's changing, right? In the same way that text messaging, you know, it's a tool that works for some people, especially if they're close to the district, but maybe not others as well. So it gives you permission to fill your toolbox with those tools that you know will work for certain, you know, stakeholder groups. This again is a question that we use increasingly, and this is a net promoter score. You probably heard about this, and it's simply on a scale of 0 to 10. How likely would you be to recommend the school district to a friend, colleague, or family member? 0 indicates you would not recommend. Score of 10 indicates that you would be extremely likely. Again, we don't have to include this. This can go away. this is kind of a nice one to establish some baseline data. And it can be one of those things that as you're going through your communications efforts that you can come back to as kind of a fundamental, measure of your progress.
I like that question. I actually really liked the next one too, not to jump ahead at first, but now with that, I'm thinking about the data and I'm wondering, like, say you get a couple hundred people answering question 11, like how as a board member am I going to be able to sort of like digest how somebody describes our community? So I kind of like how simple 10 is with the ranking. I'd be maybe more interested in how someone would describe our communication, or getting more at that, even though it still might be like a lot, or maybe breaking down some more of the nuance of like asking people questions about like, well, sorry, wait, I'll wait because I think it's at the end, but I do like 10. I do like 10. I wonder if 11.
I have a question about 10 before we move back to go on to
Sure.
11. So I am a teacher. And so when I read this question, if I'm a teacher filling this out, I might think to myself, well, you mean to work here, to be a parent here, to live in the district, even though I am married without children. So
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit of ambiguity in that question coming from someone who was a parent and teacher in the area. So I'm wondering if there's a way that we could just be specific about what we're looking for here.
We could. Let's push on that a little bit, because you're right. You wear multiple hats in the district. How I look at this question is, and again, I'm just going to present this. We will do exactly what you want. What I often think of is this is kind of a gas station question, which is to say, hey, Joe, I know that you work in the district and also have kids in the district, or live in the district, and maybe you live next door to the school. We're thinking about buying a house in the district and sending our kids there. What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And my sense is that if I were asked that about a district where I worked, to me, I would have to kind of bring all of those things together and say, okay, here's how I would recommend. So I think we could certainly qualify that. In other words, we could ask this, our survey could ask specific questions, could ask this different ways if somebody said that they're a teacher, right? And say, please answer this from the perspective of being a teacher, or please answer this from the perspective of parent. We may also find that it's just better to leave it general.
Right. Actually, as you talk about it, and process through this, and I thank you for answering my question, maybe leave it at is, because it would be interesting to see how a teacher responds compared to a parent in this regard. So actually, maybe we just do leave it that way, because it would be interesting to see how they answer, So, okay. Well, thanks for clarifying that.
Joe,
It's a great question.
Joe, is your angle on this one, because I'm just wondering, because I'm listening to what Molly's saying too. Are you asking them how much likely they would be to recommend it for their child to attend
so, right?
the district? Because I could see the answer being different for different stakeholders, but if you know what I mean, versus are you recommending somebody to work there?
Yep. Here's how typically we use 10 and 11. I've asked number 11. I bet I've asked that 300 times over the years. I always find, and again, this is the data nerd. I love disaggregating these two questions by the relationship the individual has with the district. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I think is really interesting when we ask, especially this open-ended question, there are a couple of things that we look at. And this might sound a little bit strange, but the first thing that we do when we look at that question is how many characters average have been left by this. I always feel like that's a pretty good proxy for the level of engagement. Meaning, I'm thinking years and years ago, Perry's tired of hearing me tell this story because I tell it so much and I love this story so much. We were doing some work in the Howard Suamico School District. They had a referendum. It did not pass by a lot. There was a lot of anger in the community. we put a survey, a quick little dipstick survey in the school district. We use this question just to kind of almost as a palate cleanser, just to put it out there. And for this, the average was like 200 words. It was remarkable. And a good half of those people were on their cell phones. That's a lot of language, a lot of curse words, I will also say. We couldn't repeat some of the stuff. Whereas a high level of engagement in that community, and even though people were very angry, right, about what they had experienced, I always say you would rather be in a situation where people are angry but providing you with a lot of feedback than a situation where you don't get anything. We're working with a school district in California that has very low levels of engagement, and people are leaving three, if they, they're leaving 3 or 4 words on this. So I look at it for that. I'm also find that it's really interesting, just as we were saying, to be able to compare that for teachers and staff, or for people whose children graduated. One of the things that we're always looking at, especially in communities like yours, where yours is a destination district. By the way, I live in Wauwatosa. Wauwatosa is great. We love it. This was a bunch of years ago, we were trying to buy in your community and it just got priced out. So I know it's a destination district. It's always interesting in districts, I think, like yours, to be able to compare what parents who have children who are coming into the district think compared with those who have children who have graduated before, and to see the commonalities. So anyway, that's a long way of saying that's how I tend to use these two questions side by side.
If I could add something. So
Please.
Danielle, we were talking before. One thing we've also found is when you start asking like the open-ended questions, respondents are going to fill them in the way they want anyway. So even if we start narrowing down maybe what we want to ask here, they're still going to put in whatever they want to in this case. I mean, typically, and also I will tell you, Danielle, it's my job when the survey closes, it'll be my job to go through the 250, and that's nothing. I had to go through Wausau's recently, and I had 2,500 open-ended responses I had to go through. So if it's 250, that's not that won't take long, but I'll go through and find those themes. And it'll be interesting because those people who gave the district, let's say, scores 8 through 10, they're going to have the themes are obviously going to be real positive. And if we have a few that give you 0, 1, 2, or 3, I can tell you right now, I think we have a pretty good idea what they're probably going to write as well. So, but I'll do that.
Okay.
This is good. Now, again, I just got done saying before that we probably we might try to spread these out a little bit. So just keep in mind that even if we were to go with these questions, they might be, laid out a little differently. We can tack an open-ended response into another place in the survey. But typically we'll say, what's the best way for the school district to communicate with you? And again, that may go up here. And that's a really interesting one. And again, as Perry said, we get all kinds of responses. I always say somebody's always going to complain about the fact that their kid didn't start as, quarterback, in 1991, or they got, they're still angry at Mr. Smith because they gave the kid a C in, social studies class. So you get all kinds.
And is there a reason you do that one open-ended as opposed to like a ranking of preferences for how you want the district to communicate with you?
That's a really great question. We can do this really truly anyway. And Danielle, how I would say that is, if this is one where I feel like people will kind of tell you in their own words, like people are pretty gracious and they'll say, here's what you can do for me. Like in Mequon Thiensville, we do some stuff there, and we've used an open response questions. And one of the things that I found really, I was like, this is cool, is that people were saying, especially people who maybe were seniors in the community, said, hey, school district, about 10 years ago, you used to send this really good document to us. And for some reason you stopped doing it, but it was really good. And we think that you should start doing that again. We had a whole bunch of people that said that. And, Danielle, I didn't have the history, and I wouldn't have been smart enough to even include that historical thing.
Yeah, that's a good
That
point.
said, right, that said, if we find that we have too many open responses, we can convert it.
Okay, no, that I was just curious with the preference, and that makes sense. We might not have all the historical knowledge to put some of that stuff in there, so that's good.
Keep in mind the order can change, but the next one is what types of information would you like to receive? Not what
Yeah.
are you receiving, but what would you like to receive? And we
Could
try
you
to
add a few more
cover this.
there? I would think,
Of course.
like, I'd like to see something about like facilities, district goals or plans, school. I'm not sure if it's in here, school safety, or I'm not sure if urgent updates is like crisis or like serious like that. I feel like those might be a few more.
And Danielle, when I was looking at this one too, I was thinking we might just change the verbiage even on some of these.
Yeah.
Like when I say like academic programs might be progress and.
Or curriculum, I would put that in there. I think that's a
Yeah.
good one to have, just some few
Yep.
things.
Agree.
Okay.
I'll just put a little note there. Again, here's an open-ended question. We have a lot of them, but what information about the school district would you like to receive that you're not receiving? Then we switch gears a little bit. And here again, we can strike this, but we just wanted to put this in here. This is one where, and I'm kind of wearing some scars of embarrassment about this one, where, you know, I was working with the district and we got halfway through and they're like, you know, we have a lot of students and families that don't have internet access. I'm like, well, you know, of course. And so I now put these in here whenever we do this type of survey. It can be taken out, but the idea is, you know, do you have internet access at home? You know, we can ask, if you don't have internet access, how do you connect to the internet if you do? Again, we don't always use these. Maybe we don't often use these, but we can. We can ask about how people are getting, you know, what type of devices they're using. And this one, typically we don't use as much because nowadays, most of the communications that we're sending out, the difference between, we kind of write things, or we kind of encourage the district to write things as if everybody is seeing things on a smartphone, because increasingly they are. So anyway, I'll just kind of stop there and get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I almost wondered if we wrapped it all into something more like number 17 versus the first two. Do you know, like, do you have access to the internet? And then like, you know, desktop, laptop, tablet, smartphone, I do not have access to the internet. You know what I mean? It almost seems like that could just be one question, because I feel like a lot of people do have the cell phone, but they might not have like Wi-Fi or internet at home. But it would be good to know, because like our Thursday folders are completely sent home, you know, via internet. So if we end up with a large amount of people that don't have access, we need to know that.
Yeah.
So quick logistical question then, how do we get the survey to folks? How you said you like to provide it offline. How do you do that?
Yeah, so typically, and we'll really work with the district on how to do that, but typically this type of survey can go out in any number of ways, through you know, communications to parents in a number of different ways. Typically what we'll do is we'll have a URL for people to go to. So, you know, it can be, you know, Glendale-River Hills survey. It can be, you know, the initials of the school district, you know, .org, and people can come and take the survey. We like to have a custom URL for the survey, or to be able to have a link from the website. So we would have, you know, the district's URL/survey, and then it would bounce to this survey. And then in really any communication that's going out to parents or the community, to staff, emails, we really use a lot of different ways to get people to take the survey. We always also encourage board members and others, you know, to help spread the word as well. We can, if you'd like, we don't do this as much with this type of survey, but for say a referendum survey, typically we will send a mailer to everyone in the district community, a postcard, and encourage them to participate. That would be another option that would get to people who maybe don't have a connection to the school district and that we can't reach.
Mhm.
And then I think to follow up, Danielle, in terms of like maybe this, and I'm going to guess like in most districts, the percentage very, very small of family people who might take the survey who don't have some way to access it online. What we typically, we'll get you printed copies so you can have it at the schools, but maybe, at a local library, maybe some of those other spots where people might be most likely to get it. And then again, if there are ways to inform your community that if you do need to take this survey via print version, this is where you can get it. And then we'll input those results for you.
Right. I was just
That's right.
thinking of, accessibility, but also for anybody with, or who might have accessibility issues, internet or otherwise. So that's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. You can keep going.
Could we
Okay.
add an option in there, district hotspots? There are some families that they have a hotspot that's supplied by the district. So I'd be curious.
Oh,
to see
sure.
if that is the option of how they're getting their.
Yep. Nothing makes me more nervous than writing on a screen when people are watching. It never gets easier. I couldn't have been a teacher, Perry. Then question 18 is, and again, we can consolidate. There's a lot of stuff here, but the district may ask parents and community members to provide input. So at this point, it's been kind of, how are you receiving information? This question is, how do you want to provide input and feedback?
Yeah.
Perry, do you want to talk about this? I always like how you describe this one.
Well, I think what's important here, we talk about with surveys or any of our tools that we want to have meaningful engagement. In fact, as Joe knows, I just did a presentation up in Sheboygan for the Wisconsin School Public Relations Association, and it's really important that your stakeholders feel like it's two-way communication. That it's not just the district asking for stuff, but that you're actually taking feedback back in return. So this is an opportunity to, again, find out more from your families about, all your stakeholders about where they would like to, how they would like to provide information to you as a district. So that's why, again, I think this is really valuable, because where you think you're getting it might, and you're getting some, might not be the ones that they would recommend.
Mhm.
I would love to add something to that one, and I don't know exactly the language around it yet, but around like superintendent, like office hours or meet and greets or something like that,
Mhm.
because that would be interesting to know.
Mhm. And I would just ask to go through the whole survey and look for words like parents and maybe change them to more inclusive things like families, caregivers, community, whatever it is, but just to make sure that we're giving it a once over for that.
Do you have thank you for suggesting that. Do you have a preferred title?
I feel like it's situational sometimes. I don't know, families or
Yeah.
caregivers work might,
I think, I know we've mentioned caregivers several times, and then somebody said to me, they said that made them feel like it was a grandparent watching their kids or something. Like it's so funny. People have different connotations, right? With different things. I don't know, families is pretty typical, you're a family is pretty, but I'm okay with whatever. Families, caregivers. I mean, sometimes we just literally put parents or guardians, like it is situational.
Right.
At times. So like for that specific question, the town hall, I mean, could even be like student family town halls or something, you know what I mean? Like that could be written in a way.
Or town halls, just town halls.
Right. Because you've got town halls specifically for
various people.
Yeah.
So
So we can definitely work on that language.
Yeah.
Now we switch gears again. This is the last section, and these are all just Likert score real quick. So at this point, this part of the survey goes really super fast, right? And again, we can switch where these things go and where they flow easier. In all likelihood, this may go a little bit earlier in the survey, but it can be, I'm satisfied with the quality and timeliness of the information I receive.
So I'm going to ask you,
please.
do you think there's value to split that?
yes.
Because I
Yes,
feel
there
like
is.
there's a big, like,
Ah.
quality of the
I
information
think
versus
so.
how quick you're getting it. Could be really
Ah,
different.
yeah. So
I
we
think
like the
both.
question, but we should split it.
Yes.
My thought.
Got it. I love it.
What I do like is that you do not include a neutral or I have no
Right.
opinion. Like it really forces
Thank
the
you.
person to make a decision about something. I like
Yeah.
that.
I am so happy you said that because we get we get that a lot, and I will tell you one of the things that can be really challenging is that when especially with people who don't have a strong connection with the school district, we tend to see that they default to I don't know or no opinion.
Mhm.
Now, on the other hand, I think that we do have a responsibility to make sure that we're asking questions that everyone can answer. So even if you don't have a strong connection to the school district, you're not unhappy, right, with the quality. But yeah, we kind of force it, and that can
Well,
make things a little bit challenging.
you also give them opportunities to, at least in some of the questions, explain their reasoning. So if someone said disagree, that's when they could use the opportunity to say, well, I said disagree, but what I really mean is this. So
Yeah.
at least then that forces them or provides them an opportunity to explain their reasoning.
I like
That's
it
right.
because we're in a transition, and we did a survey in a district where I had just transitioned in as principal, and I was rolling it out, and I was like, wow, I was really kind of surprised because it was almost like a straight 3. And everybody said, well, we just don't know you well enough yet, so we just went with the middle. We just all picked
Yeah.
and so that was just like, oh, this is awful information. I can't do anything with this. So yeah, I think it's good to not have that option.
Yeah. Thank you.
I feel like some of these questions kind of dance around this question, and maybe that's good enough then, but I'm wondering about a question about whether people know where they can go for information. Like I know where I can go to ask a question or direct a complaint or a concern. Like I know where to go for that. I'm just kind of thinking a little bit more about this like two-way, I don't know.
Yeah, so different than I'm confident that I can get the information. I think that I'm hearing you say I know where to go.
Yeah, I guess, well, because it's like I have questions or I need information, but I'm thinking about we asked about input and feedback. How do you prefer to give that? But if somebody has input or feedback that of their own volition they want to give, do they know how to give it? Do they know where to go to give it? Do they know who to reach out to? I guess that's, I'd be curious to know if people feel like yes, I do, or absolutely no idea. Like, where are we on that gamut? Or maybe that's not necessary because we are looking to address that issue with our plan, but it's just something I was thinking of.
I like that. Let's add it in the draft. I like that because you're right. At this point, it's a lot of we're kind of pushing information as opposed to asking people for, hey, do you know how to weigh in?
Yeah.
I like that. I'm satisfied with the information that I received from my child's school. I like this. I think someone from the district added this. This is good. Give the option. And we can either do it this way, or we can say skip the question if you don't have children attending the school district. But I'm satisfied with the information I received from my child's school. This would be a logic question, so I'm going to put logic here. This would be asked only of parents who have children in the schools, but we do need to have kind of a release valve in case somebody mistyped that earlier. If I have questions or require additional information, I'm confident I can get the information. The key here is from my child's school. I feel welcome in the schools.
I have a thought about that is,
sure.
I mean, thinking about communication, and again, I'd love to know if people feel welcome, but I'd like to know more if they feel like their input or their opinions are welcome or valued. Because I mean, we are again talking about communication, and this is like looking at communication coming from their end. I don't know.
I like that, but I like number 23 as well, because I think about that communication you're getting from your principal or your building secretary or your child's teacher. It's going to influence how you feel, right? Like how welcome you do or do not feel.
Mhm.
So I like them both. I think
Yeah.
they're kind of asking different things.
Yeah. I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah.
Let's add one. And one of the things that we have here is, and again, we can have an opt out here. One of the nice things with these little Likert score questions, and by the way, this sounds a little bit creepy, but Perry and I and the rest of our team can see people come in and take these. And it's really interesting. And again, that sounds creepy and weird, but you learn, I think that we get better at putting these surveys together by watching people come through. What's really interesting is that people of all ages, including older folks online, when they take these surveys, it's boom, 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 boom. They can buzz through this really pretty quickly. And so we should feel very comfortable, I think, adding these types of questions. I like this very much.
Okay.
Keep in mind for all of these, we do have the option. We don't want to overdo it, but we can add, please explain, the question. So we'll add that, just know that we can change that. And then we add a question here, satisfied with the school district. We can, again, and I knew I liked this group when I started talking with you today. We can take this out because we may find that this is, okay.
We want an opinion.
There you
And
go.
again, let's force their hand as to why they're answering the way they're answering. Because if I answer no opinion, I'm not going to give you my opinion.
Perry, we may need to have this group on speed dial with some other districts.
I think we're just going to use them whenever we have any of these sorts of calls.
That's right. We're gonna say, I mean, you can do what you want. Glendale-River Hills really felt that a 4-point scale was the way to go.
They're a destination district, so.
They are a destination district. That's right. You can say that I said. We have to add with, and what it is, we end with a response question. This one's kind of interesting. You usually don't get a whole lot here. I always think that it's kind of a nice way to end, and usually, you get a few little interesting tidbits, here at the end. Now, this could be something that we hold. Again, the key here is that we're going to do Esser stuff too. So this is going to seem super awkward because it's going to look like a big reach as we transition to the Esser survey. Understand that this is going to be done in such a way that we're going to provide as much kind of smoothing as we can so it's not as awkward as it seems. But at this point in the survey, we would bounce to the Esser survey, which is a really, really super quick survey.
I'm wondering, let's connect, because I'm wondering if we want those to be separate. After we went through what we just went through.
Well, if they work, could you add a few more like quick bullet questions at the end too? Like the ones that are the strongly agree, like if you weren't doing 2 surveys, because I was just thinking.
We have to do 2, but I think we should separate.
If you split that, right?
I don't know. I'm open to whatever. I really kind of like the communications one right now. And I don't want to
I like the idea of splitting them. I don't like the idea of adding extra questions just to make a transition. So I think the easier thing would be to just split them.
No, I don't want to make a transition, Molly. I just want a few more questions. Right. You know me.
27 is a lot. I don't know.
27 is a lot.
But you're going to get rid of I think you're going to like condense some when you go through this draft, it sounds like, and maybe take out a couple.
I think it was 2 that they were looking to condense or strike.
For me, the thing, there's 2 things that I was like, the survey is great. The 2 things, like when we ask people about the quality of communication, like for me, I would love to like break that down more, right? Or like, do they think that it's like quality? Is that the same as accurate? Is that the same as open or transparent? Like, do we know, what about comprehension of the communications they receive? Do we know if people are comprehending the communications? Like, I don't know. I know it's a lot. And maybe you guys kind of parse that out from when you look at it all, like the Matrix or something, and you're like, oh, I get what people are getting.
The Matrix.
One I was just I can tell you that. So yes.
What's funny, is when I see quality, I think of everything you just said. Like if somebody says that I'm delivering high quality communication, I'm thinking it's transparent, it's thorough enough, it's
Yeah.
not too long.
Yeah.
It's, you know what I mean? It's
And
tight.
we do, you're right. And there's the open-ended stuff afterwards, so people could
Yeah.
elaborate there. So
And maybe
then
there are a couple
yeah.
that we go back, Danielle, and look at it again and add an open-ended. Do you know what I mean? Maybe there are a couple where we add that, where we ask them to
Mhm.
explain why. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
We
Good.
we
Ignoring
do
it.
learn. Well, no, it's a great point, and I'm glad you brought it up. And I will say that we learn a lot in the open response questions.
Mhm.
And when Perry talks about looking for themes, that's exactly what we're looking for. And we do that all with our eyeballs. There's no real, we have some tools that we can use to kind of parse through it and do some word searches. But I'm telling you, I think, Perry, would you agree that you have to read all of them, and you feel like you learn a lot by going through all of them, and you tend to see the same words and you tend to see kind of the same notions again. So you'll go back and you'll say, this is really interesting. And I'm going to use the example that you used before. And I have seen this before, where people say, the quality of, and by the way, this was true of a district many years ago to your another Southeast Wisconsin school district, suburban district, where people said, the stuff you're putting out is fantastic, but it's always 3 days late. Like, is there any way that it can be a little less great and maybe a little faster, right? and you kind of parse through that, right? And you kind of learn that by doing that. So
yeah, and I'm glad that's your specialty, because I think maybe I have some trauma from like COVID surveys where you get paragraphs of information, and I was like, I can't process 300 separate, like, so as long as we have your help sort of in divining those themes, and thankfully you have that outside perspective too, so less biased than us, right? That should be very helpful.
And the word clouds we'll put together for you, Danielle, I think you'll find very interesting. I mean, the reality is that my guess will be, with the number of open-ended questions we have, we're going to see a lot of themes, and we'll boil down what the most important ones are. I see that Allison just put a note in the chat. The one thing I was going to say, so we just finished up and we have it live in the field right now, a survey for Fort Atkinson. And it's interesting because they originally wanted to do a referendum survey and include 2 other topics, not just Esser. I mean, there were 2 other topics with it. And when we got to the point where, I mean, first of all, they know they're going to referendum. They need to get those answers. We decided that there was real value in doing 3 separate surveys over the course of a couple of months. And again, one thing it tells your stakeholders is that, we've always engaged you. We're going to engage you even more now. And so we can at least, if nothing else, maybe with this one, let them know that another survey will be coming on Esser funds. And we don't have to do a lot more than that. And then just kind of, tease them about when to expect that. But the thing is, it's pretty long right now. So I think your community will appreciate the fact that they're going to get an opportunity to weigh in on that when we decide to put that one out in the field as well. Yeah,
that sounds good.
It certainly makes things, I think, easier and cleaner if you break those into 2 surveys. We could do it the other way, but I think it does make I really like this part of me is I kind of like how this came together, and the district team was really, really helpful in kind of helping shape this. I think we're going to be able to do a really, really nice communication survey to address the items that you have. And then I think we can work with the admin team, right? And create that really solid Esser survey. And my sense is that, again, it works. I'm definitely good with separating them. But again, we'll do whatever you'd like.
No, I agree. And the Esser one is so much more prescriptive, I guess. There's not like a lot of room for, do you know what I mean? So that's something that we can just kind of get together and do. I really like this communication survey. Like, I really like the questions and how it's coming together. And I almost don't want to like ruin it by having people be tired and go into something else. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I really like it.
And that makes my day. Perry's going to tease me later, but we always kind of feel when we put together the surveys that there's kind of some craft that goes into it. There's not a lot of craft with the Esser survey. They kind of are what they are. So I think in terms of next steps, what we can do is Perry and I can put our heads together, and typically how we do this is we take your feedback, we revise the survey, and then we look at, you know, this is going to sound so silly, but we look at things like flow, right? And what we want to do is we want to avoid abandons, right? Like a bad survey, if we put together a bad survey for you, we'll have 40% abandons, right? In the middle of the survey, people just leave. That's a terrible survey. That means we haven't crafted it right. So I think what we'll do is we can revise the survey, make sure that we have the questions and that we're collecting the data that we want. Then we'll go through and we'll craft the survey. We can come back to you, you know, Allison, with a revised survey on a Google Doc. Then we can go and we can program it so that you can see it, you know, how it looks, and we can experiment with it, we can test it, and then it's ready to go in the field. So, you know, this, and as Perry said, it doesn't take long. I think we have everything we need.
I'm excited. It's exciting.
Yeah,
And I
thank
would
you
add
so
some-
much. Thank you. It is exciting. It's a good survey.
We'll look to you after we send that revised version to you, is then when we get it formatted, is have your team here actually take the survey. We'll remove all those results, but have them take it. So first of all, and you then can tell us, no, it felt too long. We need to go back with it, or no, it flowed really well. It did take 15 minutes, like we talked about. We're all good. But you know, it's better to have the team do it now, because, you know, rather than once we do it live and make changes, because that sort of throws off things. So, yep.
Yeah, I like that.
And then Allison, why don't I'll connect with you tomorrow. I'll email you, and we can talk maybe a little bit more about the timing for the Esser survey and getting that one ready to go. Just to we'll put a timeline together for that as well.
That sounds great. Sound good, Lindsay? Got to talk to the money person on that one.
Okay. Yeah, we'll make sure
Well,
we hit all your timelines for that too. So, yep.
Great. That
Thank
sounds
you for
great.
taking the time to explain this to us and go through
Thank you.
each question. That was helpful.
Yep.
Oh, good. Well, thank you for the opportunity to work with you, and this is fun. Thanks for letting us geek out, and we just appreciate it. So we'll follow up with a revised survey, and again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet.
All right, we are
Okay.
going to, thank you. We are going to move on to item 2B, in-person board meeting communication. Allison, did you want to just go over this a little? Or?
Yeah, so I sent you guys a like a Google Doc with the information, but then I was going to try to share, because we have a parent communication, you know, that we started putting out once a month. And so I started putting that into the actual newsletter. So let me find that, because I can share that with you guys so you can see what it would look like. So my thought is,
different than what's on board docs?
no, it's the same information. I just made it pretty.
Okay.
So I can show you what it looks like in the actual s'more. And I put some headings on it, you know what I mean? So that it
Sure.
just flows a little bit better.
Sure.
So let me share the screen. And so I can find that. And then the other thing I was going to say is that I would send it home in the parent communication. And then I would also, why is it not going to, sorry, I do not want desktop 1, because that is us. And that would be really weird if I shared us. So I would send it home in the parent newsletter. I would put it on Facebook. We would post it on board docs, with the agenda. So those are just some ways. And then I was thinking the way we could get that information out to the community. So basically anybody that's thinking about going to a board meeting, the way they would access the agenda, they'd be able to also access just some of the information.
Could it possibly be a news item on the website? Just
Yeah,
just a
yeah, for sure.
highlight there.
And even just to say, look for our new in-person meeting guidelines, you know.
Yes, right.
Yeah, so we could do it as a news item, and then even just put it in the parent communication. It will be in the parent communication on the website, but just to alert people.
Yeah.
So I just started the parent newsletter, and I have this section here on board meetings, and then just return in-person board meetings. So everything in the document, I just kind of made easier to read. So location and capacity, so that it's in the library, that there's 30, but then that we have an overflow area just in case. COVID protocols. So Jim went in and measured, and he would space three feet apart. And we would ask, obviously, everybody to wear a mask. Agendas and live streaming. So then this is just sort of like some of those logistics.
Mhm.
So the agendas and Zoom links will still be found in board docs. Meetings will still be available live stream. The Zoom link will be provided. And then the piece about public participation, oh, and they'll still be recorded. And then public participation. So we just offered several ways.
Yeah.
I figured we'll do
Love
one
that.
month and see, you know, if something
Yeah.
flops or nobody uses it, we can always just change it. So they could either send in an email that I would send to you guys or to Andy before the meeting. They can attend, obviously, sign in and share a public comment, or we tested it out in the webinar feature. There's a question answer. And what's really nice is it's not a chat. So it's not like people talking to each other throughout the meeting, but they submit a question and it goes directly to Karen and then she can just read it. So that still gives us that public participation piece where
Yeah.
if they want to do it in real time, it's still an option. So that's kind of what I had mapped out, but totally let me know if I missed something.
No, I think it's great. I was really happy with the way you worked out public comments. I guess I wonder if we want to make one note somewhere in there that like public participation will still be following like our public participation policy or like our
Yeah.
visitor, because I feel like you might have people like asking a question whenever, but like we could have Andy go over that at the start of the meeting too, that we're still going to be following our policies. So that means that questions will be addressed, you know, after an agenda item's been presented or on non-agenda items during, you know what I,
Yep.
so just like
Yep.
a nod to that so that when Andy goes over it, it's not like, you know, people don't think it's a free for all.
We are.
I'm certain I missed this at the last full school board meeting, so I apologize for the redundancy, but what was the decision to have committee meetings still be virtual as opposed to in person?
I don't think that there was.
I really think it was convenience.
Okay.
So it was like recognizing that, you know, we should have our regular meetings in person if kids are in school and we're doing activities, but then also recognizing that, hey, a silver lining was Zoom is really convenient.
Right.
For
Okay.
committee meetings. I think it was just really kind of boiled down to that. That's what I was thinking, Daniel. I don't know if you felt like it was different.
Yeah, I don't know that it was like, we didn't like, it wasn't a robust discussion, like, should we, shouldn't we? It was kind of like, it's working, let's do this first. And then, but also, yes, the air of it was convenient, was there. Yeah.
Okay.
So Danielle, what link, we are continuing to follow our current public participation policy. And then, is that like at the end of the meeting?
No.
No?
No. So I guess I'm just saying a note too. This would mean that, I guess it depends. If somebody has a question or comment on an agenda item, that should be read after the presentation of that item to the board. If somebody asks a question and it's related to an agenda item, same thing. If it's a non-agenda item, that would follow for visitor participation. So that would give Karen like a guideline for how to participate, and Andy could go over that again at the top of a meeting, just so everyone was on the same page.
Okay, so I'll definitely reconnect with Andy on that because it's really interesting because for a while we weren't doing that. And we were going through the whole agenda and then opening it up at the end. So we've done it kind of.
This is what precipitated a conversation about public participation in the first place, because as COVID continued and Zoom continued, things were not being followed and things changed.
Okay.
And so the idea was we either need to get back to what we're doing or we need to change it. And so currently I think we just follow the policy that is in place as it's written, would be my suggestion.
That sounds good. Okay.
But thank you for putting this together. This is great.
Yeah. And like I said, we can, you know, if something doesn't work, we change it.
Yeah. And you guys had good like sound testing and video logistic, all of that?
Lindsay,
Cool.
did the microphone come yet?
Not yet, but I'll check on it tomorrow. Otherwise, I'll make a trip to Best Buy.
We're anxiously awaiting the microphone because the video is fine with us at the table and like the camera angle and all of that was great.
Mhm.
We just have to make sure we have a good standing mic, which we ordered. So then we'll test that out.
Okay. I love a good microphone. Great.
Very important part.
What is it? One microphone? You're gonna be like, you're gonna try to find the right spot for it?
There are standing mics that will catch everybody.
Okay. All right. Great.
It pivots to whoever's talking.
Okay. Cool. Because I think they use one in the Nicolay meetings and those, it's still, the sound is, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then what we did with this one to test like the chatting or the questions is like Karen invited us to a meeting and we literally sat and tested it out. So we'll do the same thing with the sound. Like somebody
Okay.
will be in a different room and we'll try it out.
Cool. Thank you for doing all of this.
Yeah.
Everyone figuring it out. We're coming back. Molly, do you have any questions or comments?
Nope.
Okay. Anything else, or could we move on to item 2C? All right, let's keep it moving. Item 2C, collecting feedback on start times and right way services.
So feel free to add, because Danielle, I know that you had asked us to start thinking about this. I talked to Lindsay and I just put on there, like, based on the timeline that they're looking at. There's two different things, right? There's the start times, which is something we want to ask families about because that could impact next school year. And then there's the, how is the service at Right Way, which obviously is going to impact RFP. So it looks like after talking to Lindsay that February would be about the right time to solicit that information to fit into the process. So we'd have it. I don't know if you want to talk to that at all, Lindsay, or if I got it right.
The only thing I would add, of course you got it right, was the only thing I would add is that I want to have some more information from Right Way, so that when we send out this survey, if we say, okay, if we were to adjust the start time, it would mean this, this, and this, and your thoughts on that. So kind of saying, like, if this were to happen, these are the options, or this is what the change would be. But I need to get more information from Right Way about if we, like, one of the conversations was having a closer start time between the two schools, but what impact would that mean? What would that mean for routes? And so we're just trying to figure out all the different scenarios that would be possible, and then when we send out that survey, to find out from families.
I guess, okay, I like that. The first thing I thought was, though, that the survey itself is just getting feedback from families about the start time for them personally, not necessarily how they feel about how it will impact the district. So I like.
No, not the district. So, like, say we said, I would like both schools to start 10 minutes apart, but the impact of that might be middle school and elementary school students riding on the same bus. Like, just being really clear to families that if they're like, that they know kind of not district impact, but family impact.
Yeah, I understand that. I just wonder if that's more something for administration and the board to, like, debate, understand, once you understand how families feel about the change. And, like, I guess I just wonder if that information goes at the same time that you're asking folks how they feel about certain things. It'll depend on how it's presented. But
and I think it's hard because if we say, do you like these start times or do you want it to go back? And a whole bunch of people say yes.
Or not just go back. I like Lindsay's idea of saying, like, there are options. I like that part, I guess.
Yeah, I guess where I'm struggling is, so we get all this information, we go, okay, so the number one option is X, but do they know that that means A, B, and C? And so now how good is the information? Like, do we have to go back? And
I get it.
You know what
I'm saying? I'm just, I know a lot of times, like, I'm cautioned when asking people, like, when we ask community members things, to also, like, some of these things are still within the purview of the board and the administration. So when you give all this information too, are you giving like an impression that they have that they have a say in the decision in that way, other than offering feedback for the board or administration to consider?
I think I hear you. And I think it's totally a balance, and I would never push back against that. Like, it being our purview, but I would hate for families to think, like, oh, well, I'm going to pick this start time and everything's going to stay exactly the same.
I think it's a balance. I think you're right. It's a balance. It's just, those are my like instinctual thoughts when Lindsay started saying that.
And the other piece, and I'm just gonna, like, I don't want to get into like a huge conversation about this because it's another conversation, but there are some other pieces we may want to add into there around calendar for next year, right? Like, because by then we're going to have some ideas around professional development, or how parent teacher conferences or early release or any of those things we might be considering. So that would be a really nice opportunity to, like, weave some of that into that survey.
Yeah.
Get feedback on that too.
The only other thing I was hoping, I thought information that could be vital might be how staff is feeling about start time changes. And then that would be something I would consider as well if we're considering making any changes.
Yeah.
So,
And that might be a totally separate, like
Okay.
just survey to them. And then
Okay.
the other piece too, that I agree with is just a service survey, right?
yes,
Like
yeah,
somehow coming up with
Yep.
questions about like timeliness and customer service and things like that for
Yeah.
RFP.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly, yeah.
totally agree.
And then you have information to families about research. What are you thinking there?
So one of the other things we were wondering is like, do we provide any of that? Like, do we dig in and look at like start times and impact to start times and any of that? But maybe that is just like us as a team.
Yeah,
digging
I would
into
think
that
that's where I would go
information,
with that, because
information.
when I look into it, I mean, what I found is there's maybe just a couple reputable studies that say, you know, one says good, one says maybe not so good, or so. I mean, I'd love to dive into that, but I also like I don't want the survey to feel like we're trying to elicit a specific response from anybody.
Agree.
And if we're offering like once, you know, unless we're offering, so yeah, that yeah.
No, totally agree. And maybe that's just for us, like as a
Yeah.
team to look at.
Yes, I'd love for you to share that.
Yeah. And I'm not even like thinking just like research, but like talking to other districts, right? Like who have been doing something a certain way for a while to see what they
Yeah.
feel like the impact's been. Yeah.
Okay. Molly, do you have anything? I know we're running long for this meeting. I apologize.
That wasn't you. I brought the presenter.
I know. I was so ready to like get through this, but that's okay. It was a good. I was glad we got to have so much input. No, that was great. Okay, so then so we'll just stay tuned to that as that gets drafted and
Yeah,
as we get there.
Pulling some stuff together and bring it
Okay.
to.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you for getting that.
Of course.
Okay, so we will move on to item 3, visitor participation. I can't, my screen's not full. Is it just us? No, we have some folks in here.
Yeah.
If anybody would like to participate or comment on a non-agenda item, you can raise your hand. I'm not seeing any, but my screen's also not full. No one's seeing any, right?
No.
Okay.
Going once, is that what we say?
Yep, once, going twice. Well, then I'll just say thank you everyone for being here tonight, and I will see if I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I will second. All in favor, voice vote. Aye.
Aye.
Jenica, you were so quiet.
It was all handled. I loved it.
But I'm glad we got to see
Great.
your face. So thanks for coming.
And here,
Okay.